Oklahoma. This tape recording is being made on the 28th day of January, 1956, at 736 14th Street in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Mrs. Oakley will assist. Mr. Oakley was born on March 22nd, 1806, in Ranger, Texas, where he went to school. Before the Wright brothers flew in 1903, Mr. Oakley wanted to fly, and after he had seen Al Rogers fly over in a Wright pusher, he knew then that he had to fly. Mr. Oakley, what was the first step you took in learning to fly?
Well, let's see. Well, that'd be kind of hard to say, because I took so doggone many of them. But about the first one was building wings on a bicycle.
Oh, is that right? Well, how did that come out? Was that very successful?
No. No, it's like a lot of being successful. Except to tear up my bicycle.
Oh, you tore up your bicycle. Well, who was it that helped you on that? I understand in our talking this over, you had your bicycle and put some wings on it.
Yeah. The boys around the block there.
Did you ride it down the street and it couldn't get us airspeed to take off?
That's
so
right.
What happened after that?
I got them to help me push up to the mountain.
Mm-hmm. How did that come out?
Not very successful, I'll tell you, because we pushed off a bluff of about 40 feet high, and I had no way for control. I hadn't even thought of that. I just going to lean one way and then the other when it's necessary. And that didn't work.
Oh, it didn't?
I found out later.
You didn't go to the hospital over that ordeal, did you, Mr.
No.
Oakley? Well, after you tried the bicycle and all, and you, of course, I knew you were interested in flying, when did you meet Dorsey Askew?
That was after I'd been to the Army.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe you joined in Fort Worth in about, about 1918 or 17, wasn't it?
1918.
All right. I believe you went to Hicks Field and joined up in the Air Corps.
That's right.
Could you tell us what you did at Hicks Field?
Well, right then I was just a PFC, and all I had to do was to do KP, tell you the truth about it.
A lot of KP in the Air Corps in those days, I guess.
Yeah. And then I was sent to the mechanics training school at St. Paul, Minnesota.
Uh-huh. I believe Mrs. Oakley pulled out a plaque that said you were a master mechanic.
Yeah.
And had the rating of a
Master Sergeant.
That's right. Well, I guess that proved out all right. Well, what happened from St. Paul? Where did you go from there, Mr. Oakley?
Well, I tell you, I come home as soon as I could.
You were an instructor, though.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where you were an instructor for the duration.
Yeah, for the duration of the war.
Well, you were discharged in 1919, and then you came down here. And I
Came
believe,
to Ardmore.
Right. You lived over in the southeast part of town. Well, could you tell us what you did in your garage over on Carter?
Well, we had a bunch of old parts and so I just decided I'd build me an airplane.
Mm-hmm. Was Mr. Askew with you at that time?
At that time, yes.
All right. After you got the plane built, you had to have a place to fly. Now, where did you go from there?
Went out here north of Ardmore.
I see. Well, it's just about 12 blocks from this present location out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, how long did it take you to build a hangar to set up this flying field?
Well, we were months and months getting the people interested enough to buy, to build a hangar.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you had the school.
Oh, is that right?
And then, after operating in the school for
Oh, before this, though, honey, you and Darcy did exhibition work all over the
yeah, but that was
country.
after we got this one ship together.
Oh, I see. Well, I believe you formed the expedition, the Oakley Escadrille
Yeah,
at the Oakley Airport. I believe that was the name of it.
that's right.
Where are some of the places that you went to?
Well, we operated all over Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and New Mexico.
Well, looking through some of the papers here, I see, as far as airfields concerned, in this one paper, it says the Advance Guard in Oklahoma. It shows the Dawson Flying Field in Tulsa.
And that was up to Tulsa,
Uh-huh. And then,
McIntyre,
right. Well, J.H. Hudson was a drilling contractor in
at
Ardmore.
Ardmore.
Well, did you do any flying for him?
Yeah, he done his own flying.
Oh, he did.
I taught him to fly.
Oh, is
I
that
taught
right?
him to fly. He done his own flying.
Well, that's a good deal. It says down here, Arthur Oakley and Dorsey Askew, Ardmore, give quick air service. This airplane, what kind of airplane is that right here, Mr. Oakley?
Canadian Curtis.
Canadian
Canuck.
Curtis. Canuck. Some more articles here. It says, Oakley again leaps from train to plane to please the picture man.
Yeah, they didn't get a picture off the first time.
Oh, they didn't.
No, they missed it, and so I had to do it over.
I guess you enjoy doing things like that, though. Well,
It was quite amusing. Art thought he was just about the fastest thing going, so he asked this old-time railroad man how fast the train would go.
mm-hmm.
He said, "Sonny, just as fast as it'll turn a wheel." So Art says, "Well, now you want to get it going good." And he said the result was that the old man just ran clear off and left him.
Is that right?
That's right.
Ouch!
Come back here, cat. Quit bothering us here. We're trying to get a tape recording. What is the name of your cat, Ms. Oakley?
Ching Ling.
Jean Lee. Well, it's a very pretty cat.
It's just about as no good, though, as anything I know of.
Well, back to here to the flying again. There are some more pictures and another. It says Arthur Oakley, the aviator. It says another place where you went to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
All these airplanes that you put out at Oakley Field, what kind of school did you have set up down there?
Well, we just taught the use for flying
Mm-hmm.
and give service to any ship that would go by.
Was there very much air traffic in those days?
Quite a lot.
There was. Well, who are some of the people that you taught how to fly, Mr. Oakley?
Well, there was Hudson and Johnson, E.G. Johnson,
Uh-huh.
and
Freeman Gall. Freeman Gall.
yeah, Freeman Gall,
And Earl Whitten.
Earl Whitten,
Virgil Turnbull,
Virgil Turnbull.
who he's now an airline pilot.
Well, how about this man named Wiley Post? I understand he did some flying out here.
He sure did.
I believe he came to you a long time ago and asked you to teach him how to fly. Is that right? And you soloed him, I understand.
Yes, that's right.
Well, he was the man who went down, had a little hard luck up north in Alaska. Matter of fact, he had Will Rogers with
he
him.
was killed with Will Rogers.
Mm-hmm. Well, in your own words, would you mind telling us about that experience? I believe you pretty well know about it.
Well, the thing that he done was to what I'd say call stumpy toe,
Mm-hmm.
and Wiley had never been used to flying a ship with pontoons on it, and when you get the tail a little too high on a takeoff especially, why,
It'll stub its toe in the water.
just go under.
Nose.
Nose
And that's
down.
just exactly what happened to him. He was going along and he got his nose a little too low and tail too high, and the nose just went.
Went down, I see. Well, here's a picture. It shows Ben Scott standing in front of the airplane that Wiley Post and Will Rogers were killed in
Yeah, that was taken out here.
at Oakley Field.
They flew through there.
But that ship was completely rebuilt just on Wiley's
Suggestion?
suggestion.
Yeah, they took it out to California and they put a adjustable pitch prop on it, so which changed the center of balance on it. You see.
Well,
They made it awful nose heavy. Fact of the matter is, you couldn't hardly hold his nose up.
Is that right? Well, Mr. Oakley now, or Mr. Scott, I believe, is still flying. He's a professional flyer for Lloyd Noble, I
For
believe.
Lord Noble.
Well, didn't you do some flying for Mr. Noble back yonder?
The first.
Oh, is that right?
That's right.
Well, where are some of the places that you flew, Mr. Noble?
Well, all over
From Canada.
from Canada to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you the truth about it. He just liable to go to Mexico or Canada. Didn't make any difference whichever one he had to. We would go to Mexico maybe one trip and then to Canada the next.
Well, about some of your flying experiences, we're going to skip around in this interview, this recording. I believe we'll get more out of it, skipping through the notes that I've taken and through the pictures and old clippings. Some of the flying experiences that you've had, I remember you were telling me about one time you were coming in out west of Ardmore, and it was snowing or it was raining.
Raining.
Well, how did that come out? Did you make it to the field all right?
I made it in the field after I hit the top of this ridge out here.
And did it hurt the plane very bad?
No, it didn't hurt the ship at all.
Well, that's a good deal. You were lucky then.
You know where that ridge west town is out here?
Yes, I sure do.
I hit the top of that about 4 feet from the top on the far side. Is then when I went up over the top, the next place that I could see was the field out here.
Mm-hmm. Came on in and made a successful landing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on this flying experience, I'm taking flying lessons now, and matter of fact, I soloed the 30th day of December of last year. I haven't got any terrain yet. Matter of fact, I can't fly unless it's beautiful weather, the ceiling and the visibility unlimited. But in those days, you flew with hardly any instruments in most kind of weather. Is that right?
Well,
Just stick your head out and look.
just stick your head out, and if it looked kind of good, why just try to go ahead.
Or did it ever get real rough and you had to turn around and go back in some of your
Oh
flying?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, at the airport out here, I remember you telling me something about a monkey that stayed out there. Would you mind telling me about that?
Well, we had a little old monkey that somebody gave us. I don't remember now who gave it to us. But he would ride around with us, and he'd get I don't know whether you remember those old ships, but they had a wire run from the nose back here to the wing right here.
Mm-hmm.
We call them drag wires.
Yes.
Well, he would get up on that and hold on to it and open his mouth and stand there and all the time would fly.
Right there behind the propeller wash, is that right? Well, he must have been a crazy monkey to do any flying.
He's air-conditioned monkey.
Well, I understand that you used to tease that monkey an awful lot. Would you tell me about that?
Well, he had a habit of, if you put a pump down, why he'd run up and grab the hole and put it in his mouth. So we thought, well, now it'd be funny someday. And so we laid the airline hose out there. He'd run, put that in his mouth, and I turned the air on, and of course it just blew him out across the hands.
I guess that monkey learned one good lesson then, not to stick his mouth in things. Well, here's one picture of you standing on the wing of an airplane over a town. Now, in my flying experiences, I want to stay inside all the time, but you walking on a wing, that sounds pretty dangerous to me.
Well, it is. It is. It's not the safest thing in the world. I'll tell you that now. But of course, we used to get up on there and loop.
And loop while you stand on the wing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that.
Were you tied down in any way?
No, just
golly.
Put your foot up against. You see, on top of that wing there, the wire runs out there to hold up this overhang on this wing.
Mm-hmm.
And just put your foot up against there and stand there.
They would take two airplanes and fly at the same speed,
mm-hmm.
and with a ladder hanging down from the top plane.
Yes, ma'am.
And pick Art up.
Is that right? Well, Mr. Oakley wasn't exactly, he was a pilot, and then, too, was a daredevil.
Well,
no doubt about that at all.
It didn't have good sense, maybe. Maybe that's where you ought to put it.
Well, it says, in this one clipping here, approximately 3,000 people were out to see the airplane demonstrations and daredevil parachute drop at Ardmore Municipal Aviation Field yesterday. It says more than 400 automobiles were parked out at the field. Around that time, automobiles were just up and becoming too, I believe, weren't they? Well, I was reading the other night, speaking of parachutes here, where Wiley Post came out to the field one day and was talking to you, and he wanted to make a parachute jump. Would you tell me about that, how he came out on that?
Well, we used to go out every weekend, you see, and have what they call a trade day.
Uh-huh.
And they would go around to the merchants all over town, see, and sell space in these little leaflets, you see. And then we'd come on when they'd get them all up, and we'd drop those little leaflets, you see, around the surrounding town.
Mm-hmm.
Call it Trade Day. And then on Saturday, we'd have this parachute jump.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wiley came out there one day and said he wanted to make a jump.
Yeah.
So you fixed him up, I believe.
yeah, but over at Illinois, Durant, I think. Why? He got all ready to make a jump one day, and it happened that it was Trey's Day, sure enough, and there was people in town there from every direction, and wagons and buggies, and so nothing. But he just come down right in the middle of town.
Oh, was that right?
And his parachute landed on one side of an old mule, and he landed on the other. And then they took off. Well, when they did, this old chute opened up to be right behind them. And down the street they come with this parachute open up. This old mule looked back, he'd see this parachute, and he'd just run that much faster. And of course, the parachute opened that much bigger.
Wiley never did go back after
And Wiley never did go back to get his chute. And I just kept going. I didn't stop. I just kept flying.
Oh, tell him about Dr. Hardy.
Oh, yeah. In the notes we had here.
Early.
Yeah. I understand that you have the privilege of saying that you were the pilot of the first airborne flying ambulance.
That's right.
Would you mind telling us how that came about?
Well, Dr. Hardy was very much interested in aviation. In fact, the matter is, he and his wife done a lot of riding. And so we just thought, well, now it'd be a pretty good stunt if we would fix one that we could use for an ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
So we just took the tail end out and fixed the top so it raised, you see, on hinges, and
Hold the stretcher.
and we made a stretcher to go in there, and then we could just put a patient on the stretcher and lay him on top of this turtleback, the enclosed lid on top of him.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever we'd get the field, when we'd start, if we'd get a call, like out here in the field somewhere, we'd call the Harvey brother and have them meet us at the field and tell them what time we'd be back, you see, how long it'd take us.
One of your trips was after Bud Blue. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, when Bud Blue was shot over here, at Wichita Falls, why, we had to go over and get him.
Well, how did it come out? Did he live all right?
Oh, no, he was killed over there.
Oh, is that right?
He was shot and killed over there.
Well, that was a little bit before my time. I guess the reason I can't quite remember that.
And he was an awful big man, and the back of this turtleback had to lay down, you see, on him. And so, well, it just wouldn't close with him in there, you see. So this partner of mine, we said, well, Skew, how'd you get him in there? Well, he said, I just stood up on him and closed the door.
Art used to fly Dr. Hardy around all over the state, and he'd land in their pasture or on the highway, just most anywhere. The doctor'd go in and tend to the patient, and then they'd come back home.
Well, there was the beginning of the oil fields, I guess, around here in Oklahoma, and I'm sure that there were some accidents out there that required hospitalization or a fast trip to the hospital.
Yeah, I remember one very well. We went out and got a boy, brought him in, and some way the ambulance wasn't there when we got back to the field, and I lifted him out of the ship and put him out there because it was awful hot back in that tail, you can imagine that. Put him in the shade of the wing, and I come along to have something to say. I said, well, how you feel, son? Well, he said, I feel just like a fat pig in the sunshine.
He died.
He just died in a few minutes.
Is that right? Well,
Because he had his whole head bursted.
Oh, is that right? Well, that's too bad. Mrs. Oakley, we were saying Mr. Oakley and Mr. Noble flew to Canada and Mexico and all. What did you do all that time? Did you go along on any trips?
I'm afraid I did.
Oh, what did you do? Did you watch the scenery go by, or was it something to pass away the time?
Oh, there's a lot of time, I'll tell you. And after so much scenery, why, you want to read. And, in fact, I crocheted a popcorn bedspread.
Is that right?
In the years.
I believe you still have it upstairs, don't you,
Yes, I have it.
Well, that's good. Mr. Oakley, you were flying Mr. Noble back and forth from California, and I believe their kids is Sam, Ed, and Dan.
And
Well, they have the present name of the oil company, Sam and Dan, now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ms. Oakley, you were telling me that day about flying them back and take care of the kids, keeping them quiet in the back of the plane while Mr. Oakley flew. I guess that was quite hard to do with all of them flying, is that right?
Well, they were pretty hard to manage. We'd tear paper dolls out of newspapers, and we'd write notes to each other, and time gets pretty long, about 6-7 hours in the air.
Yes, it
especially
does.
the little fellows.
Just tell you the truth about it. The thing that was more trouble than anything else was that this old ship had a long fuselage on it.
Yes.
And the toilet to the thing was back in the back, and they had up in front, and then they run back to the back, and then just about the time you get all
Trimmed up
to fly level, well, then here they'd come back.
Art flew Ann when I believe she was 3 weeks old.
Yeah.
Is that right? 3 weeks?
Uh-huh.
Well, How funny.
Yeah, there's a story about it somewhere there.
Maybe if we keep looking through here, we'll run across it. We'll find some more headlines. Most of these are about your flying experiences as a daredevil.
Yeah, but
once Art changed from an automobile to a
that's
plane.
not on here.
But that was up in Dodge City.
That was up in Dodge City, Kansas.
That was a fatal exhibition as far as being successful. The ladder that came down, Art was in this car, you see.
The back seat of the car.
And the ladder was hanging down, and before he caught the ladder, why, it hung on some part of the car.
The back of spring.
And there was, just numbers of people. You know how they lined up on each side. Everybody wanted to get as close as they could.
They come to see an accident.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
They sure got their money's worth, I'll tell you.
And this plane, how it swerved down that racetrack without
went
killing
right straight
anybody.
down without going out.
It cracked up then, rolled.
Oh, yeah. It sure did.
I don't know whether the boy who was driving the
No, he didn't get
plane,
hurt
he
too
wasn't,
bad.
well, he had a skull fracture, but he wasn't killed.
Well, how about the pilot? Who was the pilot?
Ask
That
you.
was Askew, and
Askew?
they said when they went out there and see if he was all right, while he was sitting up there, he had put his straw hat on, and
He always carried his straw hat right down the side of the seat right by him.
Uh-huh.
And so, after it all,
dust cleared out.
after the dust all cleared away, why, there he was sitting back there, and his fuselage broke off right behind the seat, and sitting up there with his straw hat on.
Well, it says right here in one big article right across the page, Death Rides with Oakley. Well, I believe you now. One false step and...
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, you had to, if you had a good manager, he had to figure out some wild stories so that people would, you know, if you don't promise to kill somebody, why, people won't come out and see it.
I guess that's right.
One time after an exhibition at some Texas town, why, Art and his manager and his pilot were going down the street one night, and a little boy walked up and got him by the hand.
Got
And
me by the hand and looked up at me and said, "My pop said you was a darn fool."
maybe he had something.
Well, still flying again. You know, if a person goes out to these air shows, he'll stand around and keep standing around, and we all know that airplanes are safe, but every once in a while something will happen. Well, if this doesn't happen and the people start dwindling off like they did, what did you do to keep them there, Mr. Oakley?
Well, most of the time I'd get down there and pull a bolt out of the wheel so the wheel run off.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
Well, then the people standing on the sideline would see you take off and see a wheel coming off. They'd turn around and go back to what you land in, I guess, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they see me crack up. And always just land on one wheel and run off down across the field. And pretty soon, when you lose your speed, while that wing will drop down, it'll spin around, and then you can get out and it's up so you can put your wheel back on.
After you make your money from people coming back. Well, that's all in one way to keep living. You got to have food to eat on.
Yeah.
There was a period out there where I think all of the youth of Ardmore had parachutitis.
Oh, was that right?
They'd come out there, 8 and 10 in an afternoon, and I don't know whether their mothers and dads do it or not, but they'd let them jump, and it was quite a thrill.
Well, what about this old colored boy wanting to make a parachute jump? I believe you fixed him up one Sunday.
Yeah,
didn't you?
we took him for a ride. He Well, I tell you, this kind of start at the beginning of the thing, why he kept on wanting to make a parachute jump. So we just thought, well, now there's a chance for a little publicity and make a little money. We could get a crowd out. So we just proceeded to advertise it. And Sunday come, while there was an awful big crowd out there. And so I went in the JP was gone. So I got looking for him. Finally, I saw him going out down across the field, and I jumped in the car and run down there and got it. And he said, my papa wants me to come home. Don't want me to. I said, no, there ain't nothing your papa can do about it. Now, we've already advertised this thing, and you're going to jump if I have to throw you out there.
Well, what happened after that?
Well, he got in the hangar, and then he'd try to slip off, and we'd have to run and get him. So finally, when it come time for him to make a parachute jump, we had a big crowd out there, and I just had to. And we got him in the ship by putting him in, and then after we got off the ground, we had an old exhibition chute, you see. And if you know those kind, you put the harness on and then you snap them.
Yes.
You don't do. You don't do like you do the chute now.
It's kind of a pull-off.
So he got in the front seat and then he wouldn't get out.
Oh, he wouldn't?
No. So I had to get out there and just make him get out of the front seat. Then when he got out on the wing, then he wouldn't get down on the chute. Then after he got down there, then he wouldn't. You had to reach up and pull a string out up above you to release him. No, he wouldn't do it. He'd just sit there with his hand down like that. And I just locked my legs around the strut and hung off down there where I could see, because I didn't want to tighten a hard knot. Because I knew I never would get him back up on the wing and kill him to land with him hanging down that far. So finally, I just locked my legs around the strut and hung on off down there where I could see it. And when I jerked this string, to pull this knot out of it, the bottom fell out of the chute, and this nigger come in and grabbed him for everything. His eyes about that big around.
Needless to say, he was quite a hero down in East Maine that night.
Oh, yeah. Boy, he was. I went down there one time to get him, and so couldn't find him. Finally, I saw some boys sitting on the sidewalk down there. I rode up and asked them and so one of them said, "You mean old Plum?" And I said, "Now, wait a minute." I said, "That's new one." Said, "Why do you call him Old Plum?" "Why," he said, "Old Plum crazy."
You didn't do any more parachute jumping after that, or did you get back up in the airplane?
No, that was the only one.
Well, here's another article over here about you thrilling the crowd up in Brenham.
Mm-hmm.
On down the line here, it says all kinds of people were there. Did you ever do any mail carrying or anything like that whenever you were doing flying?
Yeah.
I believe there's one article in here someplace about a strike that was coming off in between trains and all, and said you all were going to do the flying for them. Is that right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, once there was pardon me.
We had the ship that had a Hispano motor in it, and it was pretty fast. So they had a strike, and we couldn't get the mail in there. So Askew went up there after to Oklahoma City, and he landed on top of a tree. He got too big a load in it, and he landed on top of a tree on top of a two-story house.
Oh, was that right?
And we got a scratch on it.
No, and we got a rope and tied around the nose of the ship and sawed the limb off and let the ship down and hauled out the field and put the wings back on and flew it home.
Oh, was that right? Well, here's another article about, I'll read it to you. It says, a special course in aeronautics comprising the ethics of flying and instruction in mechanics of gas motors will be given in the Ardmore High School during the coming year. It was announced today by C.W. Richards, City Superintendent of Schools. Arthur Oakley and Doris Askew, Ardmore civilian flyers, have engaged to be instructors. Well, that must have been a pretty good thing. I wish we had that in school now.
Yeah, they all have it.
I'm sorry to say that they don't teach school in Ardmore High School, but I guess if somebody offered to teach it, well, there'd be 5 or 6 boys that want to take it. I know I would.
Oh, well, big trouble with things like that is being able to, well, to get it approved, you know, they won't approve anything like that.
I see.
I mean, they won't give you credit for it. You see, a thing like that has got to be just taken like any other subject, and the student Texas got to give credit for time to study. You know, if you got something out there, just like you had Latin or something else, if you didn't have no time to study it, why, you couldn't possibly pass the grade.
That's right.
And if you don't, if they don't give some kind of a credit to something like that, why, it's just a waste of time, both the instructor and the pupil.
Well, here's another one, another article that says you're hanging from the bottom of an airplane this time by your knees. Wow. Would that, I guess that gave you a pretty good thrill after a while, didn't it, doing things like that every day?
Well, it's got to be just one of those things.
It's one way to make money, I guess, but you're just like you said in the other article, you're playing with death. Mrs. Oakley, I guess you were on the ground most of the time watching him do that. What did you think about that?
Well, I didn't see too much of it.
You stayed home then while he went out and
No,
flew?
we weren't married at the time.
Oh, is that right?
No, that Art was doing exhibition work.
When did you all get married?
In 20.
In 20. And it was between the, well, you just did that for about a year, I guess, didn't you?
Goodbye.
That's about all anybody could stand of it, I imagine.
We're running back over this right quick. It was 1917 joined the Air Force, 1918 up in St. Paul, 1919 was the barnstorming, 1920 when the hangar was built, and during the next 8 years you gave instruction to the different pilots that were named a while ago, and then I understand the hangar burned down, is that right?
That's right.
That's out at Oakley Field. Well, that was too bad. What was the cause, Lang? What made it burn up?
Well, see, we was getting this ship of Miss Noble's ready to go. He was fixing to leave for Corpus Christi. And the way we had the heat oil was set on the stove, you see. So they set a gallon of oil on the stove, and it boiled over, and of course when it did, why, the whole thing caught fire.
And there it went up on the plane, which was in the hangar.
Well, it's just a wooden hangar, you know, wooden floor and walls.
It all soaked and
And that oil just run all over everything, you know. And
possibly when one plane caught, like it
then
exploded.
when one airplane caught, well, then the whole business just went up.
What?
There was 7 airplanes in the darned old hangar.
Is 7 of them? Golly.
Yeah, this big 6-passenger airplane was sitting there with his tail on the door. All it had to do is give it a shove, and it'd run off down the hill.
Ocean Cameron had a little.
We had a little radio in there that we had been using for weather reports and one thing and another, and they picked it up on the hangar inside the building and carried it out and set it down the door where it would burn up.
Is that?
People do such foolish things under stress.
Yes, they do.
We had a little ship sitting in the back door. All you had to do was open the door and roll it out. But they didn't think to do that. They just let it sit there and burn up.
Well, I believe you were telling me the other day, Mr. Oakley, that in all your flying experiences, and I believe it's been quite a number of hours, because I asked you the other day how you felt when you soloed, and it was so many hours since then you couldn't quite remember. Well, I understand that you have never done as much harm as even been in a prop in all your flying time. Is that right?
That's true, right.
Well, it seems almost incredible that a person can be such a good pilot like that to not hurt the airplane. I know I almost racked an airplane up last, it was 2 weeks ago, making a landing. Golly. On your instruction out there, Mr. Oakley, would you go through how the school worked and some of the things you did, the costs and so forth?
Well, most time where we had more than one student, while we'd have regular classes, you see, and lecture to them, talk to them about different phases of flying, and then let them ask questions, you know, about what they do if so-and-so happens. That's the thing you got to do. When a man learns to fly, and he's got to figure out things that he's going to do if something happens, because it's going to happen, there's no question about that. If you fly long enough, why, it's going to happen. And if you get a student to where he thinks about what he's going to do beforehand, why, he's not going to get in trouble.
I see. Well, what are some of the things that a boy can get into while he's up there flying by himself, practicing or going across country?
Well, there's not anything particular except forced landing. Just if the motor quits, why, 9 times out of 10, why, the student will get scared, and then something happens. But then, just ordinarily, the motor, well, the best thing that anybody can do when they learn to fly is just to go out some pretty day when it's nice and not, and then just just go with the field, and you fly in one direction, get over the field and cut your motor off, and then land with it off. And then take off and go some other direction, some other distance, or go somewhere else. And well, now the thing that used to do more than anything else, and I think it does as much good as anything, is to put a spot out in the field, you see, and then see how close you can land to that.
From any direction?
From every direction.
From every direction.
Just get up there and cut the motor off and then don't use it anymore, but see how close you can get into that.
That's what you call a spot landing, isn't it? Well, that practice there would be saying, I guess you could stop a plane in 200 feet if you have a good enough final approach, if it's clear and all. But say you're flying at 1,000 or less and your engine quits, you've got to be able to look on the windward side of the plane and find that spot, which you imagine was the practice spot you had, put your airplane in there, in that 200 feet or however it is, without tearing it up or without hurting yourself. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think it's more important to get in there, not argue with whether you could get out or not.
Yes, well, I mean, as far as saving the airplane is
It's
concerned.
nice to be able to get out,
Yes.
but be sure you can get in.
They can always take the wings off, haul
Yeah.
it back to some field and fly it out.
That's right.
Or take a fence down.
Well, if I were a kid, say about 17 like I am now, 1925, and I wanted to fly, what would it cost me? If I went out to Oakley's field and asked Mr. Oakley if I wanted to fly.
He'd probably teach you for nothing.
Well, I think most of the time we charge $10 an hour
That's for dual instruction or for the plane solo or what?
for the plane, and we
Did it average about 10 hours?
about 10 hours.
That's for solo? I see. Well, right now the prices are about the same. I believe it costs me $11 an hour for dual, and then it's $8 an hour solo, and I solo within 8 hours exactly, which is the minimum that you can get by with flying the approved school. Now then, did they have any schooling, what I mean is any regulations, civil aeronautics set up at that time?
Oh,
Very little?
thing about it, I never did pay very much attention to any of their regulations. Just argue with them when they'd come around. That's about the only thing I ever do.
See, when Art was flying, it was long, long years before you were required to have a license.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I went up to Tulsa one time to get some license renewed, and this inspector got to tell me all the things to do. Now you do this and do that. And so I just backed off in the middle of the room up there. I just said, well, now there's the keys to that airplane out there. Now I'm like a monkey. You can't tell me what to do, but I can do whatever I see you do.
Mm-hmm.
So now you go up and do all the things you're telling me to do and come down, and I'll go see about doing them. Well, of course he couldn't do it, because it'd be about 1 out of 10,000 could.
What did he say to that?
Well, he just said, well, you win. He said, what kind of license do you want?
Well, I guess after a while they picked up the regulations to where it was pretty strict on some kind of flying, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, and then not too long, you had to have a radio license.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
That wasn't very hard to get.
the trouble with the department, as I see it, well, I'll tell you, one time we had a ship come down from Tulsa, and so that boy's wife that afternoon called me if I'd heard anything about it. Well, I hadn't. So it was up and day in the fog is the dickens. So I went out and got my ship and took off, and he was coming down from Tulsa, and he just disappeared, that's all. So we didn't know where to. So I finally went over and went up through the gap over where the railroad does. And they got on the north side of the mountain and got looking around for him, and finally found it over on top of the mountain right above the dam up there at the lake.
Oh, is that right? That's up in the Arbuckle Mountains, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. He'd come across that. He hit the top of this mountain, and he had drug a flare some, I imagine at least 80 feet, and never did go off.
Oh, is that right?
Wonder the whole thing didn't burn up. But we got him out of there.
Did it hurt him very bad?
Killed.
Oh, it killed him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well,
they flew right inside that mountain.
Oh, is that right? Well, that's too bad. I believe just recently, about a year ago, not quite a year ago, Sam P. Hale Jr., who I guess did a little flying then, well, he cracked up out here in the Arbuckles, too.
Yeah, but
Was it about the same place?
he just tried to land up there in the rocks. And you can't do it.
Well, I've flown over that a couple of times, and my instructor I was flying with, he asked me, he said, how would you like to land the rocks down there? I said, I just believe I'll pass on that.
Well,
I imagine there's spots where you
there's
might
lots of
get
places
down.
up there where you can just land right on those ridges, and it's as nice as on a runway of a field. I've been down a jillion times.
About how many forced landings have you had?
Oh, gosh. I don't have no idea, to tell you the truth.
Well, the engines weren't as good as they are now. They
No.
would miss, but when it quit you just had to go down, is all there was to it.
It just quit, that's all.
Well, and at that time, it was all single
Mm-hmm.
motors. You didn't have that reserve.
One time, I was coming down from Canada and got up there in the Missouri River, and it just kept getting closer and closer, and finally I knew there was going to be a bridge pretty soon. I was going to have to go under it over something. I didn't know what I was going to do. Well, finally I come to a gap in the trees along the edge of this bank, and I thought, well, I just well crack up here somewhere else. So I just turned out through the trees and cut the gun. It so happened that I landed right in the middle of a big field.
Is that right?
Just over a bunch of trees from the airport.
Well, that's funny. That was a surprise landing as well as a good crack up then, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was only one thing wrong with it.
What's that?
There's water all over, and I had to carry my wife out of there.
Didn't have any pontoons in it, don't imagine.
But it's a good field, all right, good solid field, but it's just about 3 or 4 inches deep in water.
Well, that's too bad. Well, that makes for soft lands, I guess, but it's
Yeah.
kind of wet.
But it's sure, well.
You flew out of there the next day, didn't you, honey,
Yeah.
without your load?
Mm-hmm.
After the fog cleared.
After the fog cleared up, and I got rid of most of my load.
Well, you're just right over the fence nearly from the airport, but
Just had to hop over the fence to the airport.
but that day the
But I didn't know
fog
it.
was too heavy.
You couldn't see nothing.
Well, let's see. Right after you did some flying out there for Noble and all, and the hangar burned down, well, the people around the government wanted an auxiliary airfield. And I believe you were the pilot who flew them around in southern Oklahoma trying to find this field.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come out?
Well, there's a lot of men come down there from Washington. Well, now you're getting into territory that I'm not very fond of, and I kind of mad about too, because
They didn't do exactly what you wanted them to.
No.
You had it figured before they got here. Well, I believe they wanted to put some hangars in the Arbuckle Mountains for the war, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And make a glider school out there?
That was what it originally started out to be, was a glider school.
But that is the air base now.
I see. That's the present-day Ardmore Air Force Base.
Yeah.
But Art built the hangar over on the Springer Road.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was talking to Sam McDaniel, who has been here a
Yeah.
long time.
He helped build that thing over there, helped finance it.
Uh-huh.
You see, we didn't have much money, and Sam,
Was the godfather.
He was the. He was also the president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Mhm.
He sold bonds and bought that 170 acres, which is the present-day Ardmore Municipal Airport. I call it the Ardmore Municipal Cow Pasture, but it's about the same thing.
well,
Where'd you get that hangar from?
it was I don't know whether you know what I mean or not, but it was a compressor hangar.
Compressor.
Mm-hmm.
Was it?
Out in the
On the
field.
oil field.
Oh, I see.
And we went out there and tore it down and brought it over and put it up.
And it's still out there now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Concrete and all.
But about that time, Art decided that aviation wasn't a one-man deal. So he had been flying for Mr. Noble and trying to carry on his business too.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided to go over to Noble Drilling Company.
Is that right?
And up until his illness, why, he was an engineer with Noble.
Is that right? Well, that's a good deal.
It's been very interesting, and it was always Art's, his mechanical ideas and everything that made him enjoy oil field equipment and everything.
I see. Well, it takes a mechanical brain, I guess, to run the airplanes, to fly them, to know what makes it work, to pull different switches and why they work. I believe the requirements now for the Air Force require a mechanical mind, somebody that can think, not only watch the gauges, but to know what's going on
That's
behind
right,
them.
why they do things.
Right.
Well, I think that's the main thing with flying is know why you do something as well as to do it.
Well, the airfield over at Springer, which, like we said, they're still flying off of it right now. Did you do a lot of flying from that field?
Oh, yeah.
I believe you said one day it doesn't make any difference what happens. You have command of the airplane. Is that right?
That's right. Just always know that you make it do what you want to do, not it do what it wants to do.
That's right.
That's the thing that makes a flying successful or not. Is just to be able to to make it do what you want it to do. It's just like your wife. If you make her do what you want her to do, why, you'll get along all right. You can't just...
Better take off. Art still has one great desire.
What is that?
He wants to fly a jet.
Is that right? Well, you can't ever tell.
No, I'm going to, too.
Well, between the good Lord and you, I expect something to be worked out one day or another. Well, this has been, well, wait a minute, we're not through here yet. Here's a picture of Charles Lindbergh. He was a young man in 1927. What in the world did he do, anyhow? He was the boy that flew across the Atlantic, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
When he landed Oklahoma City, Art went up to see him.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that picture was. Well, there is a picture there made of Art with him.
Is that right?
And he landed in Oklahoma City, and I guess all the little boys over the country went up to see him.
Went up to see Mr. Lindbergh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he used to fly in the short Robinson Field there at St. Louis. I used to see him a lot in there.
You knew him before he
Yeah.
flew.
Well, this has been quite an interview here. We've talked about aviation from not the very beginning. It has been the beginning since powered flight up to the present day to jets. All the airfields, the time has been come through. This has been an interview by Gary Hartsell, a senior of Ardmore High School.